My husband mocked my small business. I made sure it became the company that fired him. I had just told him the news at dinner when his laugh cut me like cold glass. I had sat up straighter and said, I landed a big client for my handmade skincare line. He ate his steak and laughed loud enough for our friends to hear. That's cute, he said to everyone. I run a real company. This is just a kitchen hobby. The table went quiet, then the chatter resumed, but the laugh stuck under my skin like a splinter. I felt my face burn. My hands reached for my napkin, but my voice stayed steady. I said nothing clever. I smiled and sipped my wine. Inside, something cold hardened. I had worked nights and early mornings to make those jars. I had mixed beeswax and oils and tested every batch. His words felt small and cruel, like they had been waiting years to be said. I left the dinner early and walked home under the blue streetlights, my shame turning into a thin, hot plan. Hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. He made a short video the next week. He filmed me humming in the kitchen, labeling a jar of lip balm, and he edited it into a mocking clip. He posted it with a grin and the caption, "My wife's startup. Watch the cute experiment." The clip went mildly viral. The comments were sharp. People called me delusional and that woman who thinks she can sell bath stuff. I read them all. I cried that night in our tiny laundry room with the light off. My tears were warm, but they did not wash away the memory of his laughter. The next morning my inbox had a handful of orders and one angry message from someone who'd seen the clip. The orders kept coming. I counted them, then put my hands in flour sacks and started working faster. Each jar I made was a small stone in the path I began building. He thought he had humiliated me. He had given me audience. The sting stayed, but my hands learned to make larger batches. I kept the video on my mind like fuel. He wore a suit like armor. He was a vice president at Golden Lab Industries. His office had glass walls and a coffee bar. People called him the corporate king back in our small town. He liked the sound. He loved power and titles. In meetings, he spoke in crisp tones and moved numbers like pieces on a chessboard. He looked at small business people like they were interesting animals in a zoo. I had married him when I was younger with wide eyes. He had once told me he would protect me while I raised our home. Now he mocked me in public, yet his company made the kind of products I had always wanted to make honestly. The irony did not amuse him. He earned more every year and bought suits that cost more than my first sewing machine. I watched his life of glass and polished wood and felt resentment grow like a weed. He saw me as beneath him. That view would become a mistake he would not survive. I had given him my quiet nights so he could study. Years ago, I had worked 2 jobs while he did his MBA. I shelled peas at a deli from 7 to 11, then taught kids how to swim at the community pool until 9. He studied with late-night coffee and big dreams. I remember folding his shirts and tucking his books next to his pillow. I believed his promises. I thought our team would be a 2-person team forever. Later, when he rose in the ranks, his gratitude turned into a smirk. He missed anniversaries and called me cute in front of executives. I held the memory of those young years like a soft scarf. Sometimes I wondered if love had been swapped for ambition. I kept our old college receipts in a drawer, the $2 pizza receipt, the bus ticket. Those things hurt and helped me. They reminded me of how much I had given and how unnoticed it had been. I used those memories when I felt small. I let them harden into a quiet promise to myself. I would not vanish. I would rise. He forgot our anniversary one year and said, "You'll thank me when you grow up," when I fussed. It landed like a slap. I had blinked and then said, "I already have." He looked surprised that I could be calm. That was the first small spark that stopped being only hurt and began to feel like rebellion. I walked away that night and sat in my old car with my hands on the steering wheel. I thought about all the nights I had sewn and stirred and answered emails while he walked into fancy dinners. I thought of the little label maker I kept in a shoebox and the jars under the sink. I had always built things quietly. That night I began to imagine building something else, something that was mine not just in words. The taste of the rebellion was not loud. It was soft, as if the first sprout after winter. I made a list on a napkin of small steps, a new logo, a better lid, a vendor who believed in small makers. That napkin lived in my wallet for months. I joined an online group of women who sold homemade goods. They were kind and sharp. They told me to rebrand, to photograph in daylight, to put simple words on my labels like clean and gentle. They called themselves small businesswomen, and they taught me things. A woman named June helped me design packaging that looked simple but proud. Another, Tara, taught me how to write a story about how I made each batch. I learned about taxes and shipping and how to talk to stores. The group cheered when I posted a photo of a jar that had my handwriting on the label. They gave me courage like coins. I began to believe my jars deserved to be on shelves. I practiced my pitch in the mirror. I practiced saying, "I'm Nancy, and I make Bloom skincare." Saying it made my voice stronger. My husband still scoffed when I told him about online classes, but at night I practiced new formulas and wrapped them in tissue paper. I felt part of a long line of women who made things from love and grit. This felt like family. The first win felt like a small miracle. A micro-influencer posted a short review of my organic lip balm and called it real and sweet. Suddenly my email chimed all night. Orders came pouring in. I sat on the kitchen floor counting jars and writing addresses. He watched me with a sour look when I told him. "It'll fade by next week," he said, like he had said so many times about my efforts. I did not answer him. I kept shipping and wrapped each jar with care. The orders did not stop. I learned to scale and to say no to some commissions. The money was small, but the feeling was not. It felt like I had a small sun in my hands. The neighborhood stores wanted to talk to me. Women wrote long notes about how my balm helped cracked lips after cold nights. My jars traveled to neighbors and then further. That week, while he drank his expensive coffee and read company memos, I learned that small kindnesses can become a movement when you make them every day. A message came from a local investor who had seen the post my husband shared. He wanted to partner. He wrote simple words. "Your product is heart. Let's talk." My palms got slick. My husband rolled his eyes when I told him at dinner. He said, "Play CEO while it lasts." I felt the old sting, but I also felt the tremble of something new. I met the investor at a small cafe. He had soft hands and steady eyes. He believed in sustainable values and said Bloom had the right story. He offered a modest amount to help me buy more jars and to set up a website. I signed the first real business papers with my full name, Nancy Hart, and I felt a thrill. I told the investor the truth. I'd started in my kitchen, and every jar was made with clean oils. He nodded like he understood the value of honest work. I left the meeting with a small check and a bigger heartbeat. The town still thought I was a cute hobby, but I had an ally. I took the leap and registered my business under its real name, Bloom Skincare. The word Bloom made me feel like I had planted something that would grow tall if I worked hard enough. My husband stood by the kitchen counter reading emails when I told him. He barely looked up. "Play CEO while it lasts," he muttered. His tone scraped like dry sand. I ignored it and opened my laptop again. I filled out forms, checked boxes, and clicked submit. My hands trembled, but not from fear, more like a seed pushing through soil. I ordered labels with clean fonts and soft colors. I bought a bigger mixer. My online group cheered when I posted the screenshot of my approval letter. They typed hearts and clapping emojis. I felt seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. At night, when my husband talked about quarterly profits at Golden Lab, I planned my first full product line. He thought I was playing pretend, but I knew I was stepping into my real life. My business grew faster than I had planned. I signed a small distribution deal with 3 eco-friendly stores. They wanted simple, honest products made by real hands. Orders tripled. I needed more boxes, more jars, more late nights. But then the store owner from Greenleaf called me sounding uneasy. She said my husband had contacted her. He told her I was unstable and bad with money. He said she should protect her business. My chest tightened. She told me because she trusted my work, but she thought I should know. I sat at the table staring at my hands. They were hands that had worked too long and too honestly to deserve that. When he came home that night, he smiled like nothing had happened. I watched him and felt a quiet shift inside me. He had crossed a line. He had tried to break something he did not build. I breathed slowly, letting the anger settle like a stone, firm and clear. That stone would soon become part of my strength. I asked him calmly the next night, "Are you trying to sabotage my work?" He didn't even flinch. He just smirked, a small crooked smirk that made him look younger and crueler. "Business is business," he said. Those 3 words were colder than winter air. He spoke like my success was an insult to him. I stared at him, feeling something close, not break. There was no surprise left in me, only confirmation. I thought of the times I had carried groceries alone, cooked dinner after long days, washed his shirts while he talked about his bright future. He had never seen mine as real. I went upstairs after the argument. I packed my notebooks, formulas, and samples into a single large tote. I did not leave the house, but I moved my things into the spare room. I made a workspace there, a quiet place where his voice would not reach my jars. That night, I whispered to myself, "Grow anyway." And I did. The business expo was huge. Bright signs, loud speakers, polished floors. I walked in alone wearing my best navy dress and holding 3 sample boxes. My booth was small, but it felt like a little lighthouse among giants. I did not expect Golden Lab to be hosting. When I saw their logo hanging above a tall, bright display, my breath stumbled. Then I saw him. My husband stood at the center, shaking hands with leaders and smiling wide. His suit looked sharp, but his eyes were flat. When he spotted me across the floor, his smile froze. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Silent tension pulled like a rope. I turned away first. I greeted people. I handed out my samples. My bomb got warm smiles and long questions. When a store owner said, "This feels real," my throat tightened with pride. I didn't look toward him again. For the first time, he was not the center of my world. I was building one of my own. The Golden Lab CEO was a tall man with silver hair and kind eyes. I didn't know who he was at first. He stopped at my booth, picked up my bomb, and read the label slowly. "Handmade," he asked. I nodded. He rubbed a bit on his wrist and smiled. "This feels fresh. Who are you?" I told him my name, my full name, Nancy Hart, and gave him my card. He slipped it into his pocket and said, "We're looking at clean beauty right now. Keep going." He walked away before I could answer. My heart thumped like a drum. When I looked up, my husband stood at the far end of the aisle. He had seen the whole interaction. His jaw had dropped just slightly, enough for me to see panic spark behind his eyes. I held the edge of my booth table to steady myself. Something huge had just shifted. And he knew it. That moment felt like someone had opened a long-shut window in my life. A famous beauty YouTuber reviewed my bomb. She held the little tin in her hand, smiled, and said, "This is revolutionary for dry skin." The video spread fast. Orders flew in 50,000 in 1 week. I barely slept. My kitchen and spare room filled with boxes. My online group sent advice, love, and spreadsheets. When I showed my husband the numbers, he looked annoyed instead of proud. "You must be using my connections," he said. I laughed, an honest, loud laugh that surprised both of us. "You don't owe my effort," I told him. He closed his laptop harder than he meant to. We ate dinner in silence that night, but my phone buzzed again, and again with new orders. I thought of all the years he told me to be realistic. Now the world believed in my product more than he ever had. His anger felt like proof that I was finally stepping out of his shadow and into something bright. He stormed into the kitchen the next morning. "Are you telling people about me? About my company?" His voice boomed like I had stolen something. "No," I said. "My business is my business." He paced and rubbed his forehead. "You're making this harder for me," he snapped. "Golden Lab expects professionalism." I stared at him. Professionalism. As if mocking his wife online had been professional. I clenched my hands at my sides. "This is not about you," I said. He glared like he couldn't understand those words. The crack in our marriage widened. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan. I thought about our early years, our small apartment, my long shifts, his big hopes. I realized something simple and painful. His dream had grown, but he had never allowed mine to grow with it. I turned over and whispered to myself, "Let him rage. I'll rise." And I believed it. Golden Labs' marketing team emailed me. They wanted a meeting about a potential collaboration. They didn't know I was his wife. They only knew my maiden name now, Evelyn Hart, because that was the name on my website. I felt a sharp thrill when I opened the message. I agreed to the meeting quietly. No big announcement. No telling my husband. I signed their NDA, read the terms, and kept everything secret. For once, I had the power of hidden identity. I had spent years being overlooked. Now invisibility became an advantage. They wanted sustainable formulas, clean scents, and simple packaging. Everything I had already built with my own hands. I stayed calm, nodding, answering clearly. When I walked out of that office, sunlight hit me on the face. I felt taller than I had felt in decades. They thought Evelyn was a fresh, new founder. They had no idea she lived in the same house as their vice president. Perfect setup. I signed every document as Evelyn Hart, my maiden name. Golden Labs' legal team liked clean paperwork, and that name gave them just that. No one questioned it. No one looked twice. It felt strange at first, hiding my marriage like a small seed in my pocket, but it also felt powerful. The world saw me as a new businesswoman, not a VP's wife. And for the first time, I liked that. I worked late nights preparing formulas for their testing team. I kept jars lined up on my desk, each one labeled in neat handwriting. My husband came home annoyed from long meetings, complaining about deadlines and company drama. I listened quietly, knowing I was part of the biggest drama of all. He just didn't know it yet. At dinner he said, "Golden Lab is hunting for a new supplier. They'll probably choose someone big." I nodded and stirred my soup. Under the table, my toes curled with excitement. They had already chosen someone. They just didn't know her last name. Golden Lab offered Bloom Skincare a $5 million supply deal. I stared at the contract, my hands shaking. This was real. Huge. Life-changing. And the funniest part? My husband was the vice president assigned to oversee the project. Still completely unaware he'd be managing his own wife's company. I signed the deal calmly, though inside my chest thundered with victory. The collaboration would begin in phases: testing, packaging, launch planning. I followed all instructions, stayed polite, and never revealed a hint of our connection. Golden Labs team praised my formulas and called them promising. I wrote notes in a blue notebook and kept everything sealed in folders. My husband came home one night talking about a new clean beauty partner, complaining that the CEO seemed too excited about it. "Probably some rookie," he said. I smiled into my cup of tea. If only he knew how close that rookie sat to him every night at the dinner table. The trap was set perfectly. The first meeting was inside a cold boardroom with bright lights. I arrived early, wearing a sharp gray suit that made me feel strong. When my husband walked in with the team, he froze mid-step. His eyes widened and his hands went stiff around his tablet. I smiled politely and said, "Hello, Vice President." The room went silent. The board members glanced between us, puzzled. He tried to whisper, "Nancy, what are you doing here?" But I kept my voice steady. "I'm Evelyn Hart, founder of Bloom Skincare." His shock tasted sweeter than any revenge I had imagined. He stumbled through the meeting, losing his place, sweating through his shirt. I explained my products with calm confidence. The CEO nodded at every point I made. My husband looked like he wanted the floor to open and swallow him whole. For years he mocked me as small. Now he saw me at a table he thought belonged only to him. That moment lit the fuse for everything that would follow. He tried to stop the contract by shouting "conflict of interest" after the meeting. His voice cracked with panic. But the CEO raised a hand and said, "Our contract is with Bloom Skincare, not with you. Your marriage is irrelevant to our company's needs." I could almost hear my husband's pride crumble. He had spent years telling me my work wasn't real, but now his company relied on it. I opened my folder and said, Golden Lab approached me. I followed every rule. The board nodded. He had no angle left. When we left the room, he grabbed my arm. You're cornering me, he hissed. I slipped my arm free. No, I said. I'm doing business. For the first time, he saw me as someone with power. Someone who would not bow. His eyes darted back toward the boardroom like he feared they would replace him. He was right to worry. The shift had begun. He found me in the parking lot later. His face was twisted with fear and anger. You're ruining me, he said. His voice shook. For years he had mocked me without shame, but now he was scared of the woman he had pushed down. I looked at him steadily. I'm building something you never believed in, I replied. He tried to say I tricked him, but I only shook my head. You never asked about my dreams, I said. You only cared about your own. He looked lost, like a man who didn't understand the rules of the game anymore. I walked to my car without letting him follow. When I shut the door, my hands trembled. Not from fear, this time from the weight of finally standing up for myself. I drove away slowly, thinking of all the years I had given him. My story was no longer tied to his. I was writing a new one, with my own ink. Golden Lab's board began noticing odd things in his behavior. They questioned why he never told them the new supplier was his wife. They saw it as hiding key information. Someone whispered ethics issue during a hallway meeting he didn't know I overheard. Papers moved. Emails circulated. He grew more nervous each day. He came home distracted, snapping at small things and pacing the living room. I kept working quietly on the collaboration launch. The CEO requested more samples and a scent test for a new product. I delivered everything on time. My husband blamed me for everything he felt slipping away, but he had built the cracks himself. I watched him unravel slowly, like a pulled thread. One night he stood in the doorway of my workspace and said, "You're turning everyone against me." I didn't even look up. "You did that," I said. "I just stopped carrying the weight for you." His silence after that told me he knew it was true. The collaboration launch hit the market with a bright name, Eco Bloom by Evelyn Hart. The labels were clean and green. Golden Lab promoted it everywhere: billboards, subway ads, glossy posters. The products sold out within hours. People loved them. Social media buzzed with videos of women opening the tins and smiling. The CEO called me personally and said, "This is our fastest success of a year." My heart felt full. For years, I had waited for someone to see the value of my hands, my work, my care. Now the whole world did. My husband watched the celebration from the corner of his office, pale and shaken. He knew the numbers better than anyone. Eco Bloom had saved a failing quarter. I walked past him at an event, and he looked away. I no longer felt small near him. I felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. He thought he was getting a promotion. Golden Lab had promised a new senior role, and he expected to walk into it with applause. Instead, HR called him into a quiet glass room. They told him there would be no promotion. Instead, they were opening an internal ethics review about his hidden conflict of interest. His face drained of color. That night, he stormed into our house, shouting that I had destroyed everything. I didn't respond. I simply packed my laptop, samples, and notes and moved them to my office downtown. The company I built had grown beyond these walls. The truth was simple. He wasn't falling because of me. He was falling because he had built his throne on disrespect, lies, and pride. And now the ground finally gave way. Hit subscribe if you want more true revenge stories. The CEO called me to his private office. The room had floor-to-ceiling windows and a calm view of the whole city. He offered me tea and said, "Nancy, or should I say Evelyn, your line has changed our quarter. I want to acquire Bloom Skincare and bring you in as a major shareholder." My breath caught. His offer was more than money. It was power, respect, and a seat at a table I once only watched from shadows. I nodded slowly. "Yes," I said. "I accept." He smiled as if he had been hoping for that answer. I signed the papers with steady hands. Behind my calm face, a small smirk tried to escape. My husband had spent years telling me my business was small. Now it was becoming part of the very company he feared losing. As I left the office, the hallway lights felt brighter. This was the moment everything turned. The world was about to learn my name, and he was about to face his downfall. The acquisition finalized 2 weeks later. Golden Lab released a public announcement with the headline, Bloom Skincare founder, Evelyn Hart, joins Golden Lab as Executive Director of Innovation. My picture was everywhere, news sites, company screens, social platforms. I stood in the main lobby beside the CEO, smiling as cameras flashed. My husband stood at the back of the room, jaw slack, eyes stunned. He now worked under a company partly owned by me. When the CEO announced my title, people clapped. I saw him blink fast like he was trying to wake up from a nightmare. He had spent years calling me small. Now he watched me stand on a stage higher than any he had reached. I spoke briefly, thanking the team and promising to bring new ideas. My voice felt steady as stone. When I looked toward my husband, he looked away. I had not even started my revenge. This was only the doorway. The next morning, I walked into his office. Boxes were on the floor. He was packing. His shoulders hunched, as if he was shrinking. When he looked up, his eyes were red. "They're removing me from my position," he said. His voice cracked. "Temporarily," he added, though we both knew it wasn't true. I stepped inside and stood tall. "Don't forget your dignity," I told him softly. His face twisted in pain and pride. He tried to speak, but no words came. For years I had listened to him talk over me, talk through me, talk past me. Now silence was his only language. I looked at the desk where he once mocked my dreams. He was no longer the king of this place. I turned to leave. He whispered, "Nancy, please." I didn't turn back. I walked down the hall with quiet steps, feeling the weight of years lift off my shoulders. He had broken me once. Now I wasn't breakable. Later that afternoon, HR sent the official notice. His job was terminated for ethics violations, failure to disclose a conflict of interest, attempts to interfere with supplier relations, and internal misconduct. The letter needed 2 signatures, HR's and the Executive Director of Innovation, me. I read the letter slowly. Every word was true. My pen felt heavy, but sure as I signed my name. When HR delivered the document to him, I was in the room, but I heard from a coworker that he went very still when he saw my signature beside his termination. His fall was clean, final, and written in ink that carried my power. He packed the rest of his things and left the building through the side exit, head down. People whispered as he passed. The same people he once bragged to now avoided his eyes. The world had flipped, and he no longer held the higher ground. The irony tasted perfect. News traveled fast. Articles spread across the internet. Wife fires husband from her own company. Headlines spun the story into something wild, but the truth wasn't far off. Reporters reached out. People cheered. Women wrote messages saying, "Thank you for showing what's possible." I became a symbol of strength I didn't even know I carried. I walked into grocery stores and heard whispers. Good ones this time. Online, people shared clips of my speeches and reviews of my products. I felt strange being seen so widely after years of being invisible in my own home. But it wasn't fame that mattered. It was the feeling that my story finally belonged to me. I wasn't the VP's wife anymore. I was someone who had built something from small hands and early mornings. My husband tried to hide from the spotlight. I didn't. I stepped forward. I let the world see the bloom he once mocked. He tried to appear at my press conference. Cameras flashed when he walked through the doors, trying to push forward with a sad, desperate face. "Nancy, please," he said loud enough for microphones. "I'm sorry. I miss us." Reporters leaned in. My stomach tightened, but I stepped to the podium. My voice stayed steady. "If you cannot respect a woman's dream," I said, "you do not deserve her success." The room erupted. Cameras snapped. People cheered. His face crumpled. He tried to speak again, but security guided him out gently. I felt my throat shake as I walked off stage, but it wasn't fear, it was release. After years of him dismissing me, talking down to me, mocking me, the truth had finally been spoken in the open. And it was not his version, it was mine. If you're still reading, hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. Reporters dug deeper. They found messages, hotel receipts, and emails. They uncovered his workplace affair with a junior employee. The news spread fast. Former VP exposed in company affair. His reputation crashed. Even his friends stopped reaching out. Meanwhile, my company's value doubled. Women supported me, and stores wanted more of my line. My investor said, "This is growth none of us predicted." I nodded slowly, remembering the quiet nights I cried alone while he stayed late at work. Now everyone saw the truth. He was not just cruel, he was unfaithful. I didn't feel joy about the affair being exposed. I felt clarity. I had spent too many years thinking something was wrong with me. Now I understood. He had chosen brokenness long before I chose myself. His downfall was the natural end of his actions. My rise was the natural end of mine. Bloom Skincare expanded into global eco-stores. We partnered with clean beauty chains in Canada, Japan, and Europe. Our slogan, "Built from the kitchen, powered by dignity," started trending. I walked into meetings feeling tall, confident, and finally whole. The CEO asked me to lead a new team for sustainable beauty lines. I agreed. My investor told me, "You're building something that helps people." That meant more than money. Each time I shipped a large batch, I remembered the small jars on my old kitchen table. My journey from hobby to empire felt unreal sometimes. But then I looked at my hands, still steady, still capable, and I knew it was real. My husband tried to start a competing brand, but investors refused to join him. They said the same line, "You're the man fired by your wife." His name became a cautionary tale. Mine became a lesson in standing up. He tried starting a new skincare brand out of his rented apartment. He posted pictures online trying to copy my style, soft colors, simple labels, clean words. But the comments were harsh. People wrote, "Isn't this the guy fired by his wife? And feels fake." No investors wanted to support him. He had used pride like a shield for years, but now it was gone, and he didn't know how to live without it. I heard from a friend that he tried pitching at small expos, but store owners avoided his booth. His samples sat untouched. He once told me small businesses were cute. Now he wanted to be one, and the world had closed its doors. I didn't need to harm him. His own choices did that. I focused on growth, new scents, new bombs, new packaging. My team expanded, and our office buzzed with hope. When I walked through the halls, people greeted me with warm smiles. My life felt bigger than any revenge could give. But justice was still coming. I launched the Bloom Women's Fund, a charity to help women start businesses from scratch. I remembered how lonely it felt when I started. Tiny jars on my table, no one believing in me except a few online friends. Now I could be the hand someone else needed. We offered grants, classes, and mentorship. Women wrote me letters saying they cried when they opened our acceptance emails. One said, "You gave me back my voice." Those words mattered more than money or headlines. My story had changed from hurt to help. I stood on a small stage at our fund's opening event and looked at all the women in the room, teachers, mothers, dreamers, survivors. I told them, "Bloom anyway," and they clapped until I felt my throat tighten. My husband once mocked me for dreaming. Now my dreams opened doors for others. That was the sweetest kind of victory. I attended an award night downtown, bright lights, gold banners, cameras flashing like stars. When they announced Businesswoman of the Year, my name echoed across the hall. I felt my hands shake as I walked to the stage. The CEO of Golden Lab met me at the podium and whispered, for turning what was once mocked into a movement. His words wrapped around me like warm cloth. I thanked the crowd and spoke about small beginnings, about not letting anyone crush your spark. People wiped their eyes. I saw older women nodding, younger women beaming, and men looking thoughtful. In the corner of the room, I thought I saw my ex-husband slip in, but maybe it was just a shadow. Even if he had come, it didn't matter. This moment belonged to me. When I held the award, I felt years of silence break open. The applause washed over me like rain after drought. He sent me a message late one night. Just a simple line. I miss us. I stared at it for a long moment. My heart didn't twist. It didn't ache. It stayed steady, like calm water after a storm. I typed back, "You miss control." Then I put my phone down and made tea. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't need one. For years, I called myself his wife, as if that was the whole of me. Now I was a leader, a builder, a woman who had found her power. He had not changed. He was still swinging between pride and pity. But I had changed. I no longer needed approval from someone who never offered it freely. The next morning, I checked my messages again. He hadn't replied. The silence felt complete, like a book closing at its proper ending. I breathed out slowly and smiled. I was free. A publisher reached out. They wanted me to write a memoir titled From Mockery to Millions. I laughed when I saw the title. It felt bold and bright. But the more I thought about it, the more I liked the idea of telling the truth in my own words. I met with the publisher in a cozy office full of tall bookshelves. They said my story could help women everywhere believe in their own dreams. I agreed to write it. As I walked out onto the sidewalk, the wind felt cool and kind on my face. I imagined women reading my book late at night, whispering, "If she can do it, maybe I can too." That thought filled me with a deep, quiet joy. My ex-husband once tried to shrink me. Now my voice would stretch far across the world. Not out of revenge, out of purpose. One afternoon, I walked past our old home, now for sale, a big white sign stuck in the lawn. The windows looked empty. The yard looked dull. I paused on the sidewalk and studied it. This was the place where I learned to dream small, then to dream bigger. It was the place where I cried quietly, felt unseen, and whispered plans in the dark. But it was also where I learned my strength. I didn't step closer. I didn't miss it. I only nodded softly, as if thanking an old teacher. Then I kept walking. My car was parked under a tree blooming with pink flowers. I slid into the seat and closed the door gently. I didn't need to look back at the house. My life wasn't there anymore. My life was forward, bright, growing wide. One day, my ex-husband saw a billboard on the freeway. My face was on it beside the slogan, "Believe in your bloom." A coworker later told me he froze on the sidewalk, staring up at it. They said he looked smaller than they remembered, like a man who finally understood what he had lost. I didn't see it myself, but I imagined the moment clearly. The bright billboard shining over him, my smile looking down, calm and sure. He had once stood tall at Golden Lab while I stayed home mixing jars alone. Now the roles had flipped completely. He had become the shadow. I had become the light. It wasn't about hurting him. It was about rising so high that his cruelty could never touch me again. And I had risen. Golden Lab held a board meeting to finalize staffing changes. I sat at the long table with my notes open. At the end of the meeting, we reviewed the new VP candidates, 3 strong women and 1 man. I signed off on the decision. The new VP position, the one my ex-husband once held so proudly, went to a single mother starting her first corporate role. She cried when she heard the news. I smiled as I handed her the official folder. As the boardroom emptied, I stayed seated for a moment. I let the feeling sink in. Justice wasn't loud. It was calm, steady, and fair. I closed the folder gently and whispered to myself, "Bloom anyway." And I did. My revenge wasn't about destroying him. It was about becoming someone he could never stop again. Justice served. Karma sealed. Please follow for more great stories. Thank you for watching.